Since the dawn of creation, some of God's creatures have wanted to be like God. Intrigued by the serpent's claim that they would be like God, Adam and Eve took a bite of fruit. In an effort to assert their will over God's, they began building a tower to make a name for themselves. Human nature and desire haven't changed since then. Many today realize there has been a sea change in Western culture's worldview. The Judeo-Christian worldview is becoming or is a minority view. Carl Tiechrib writes, "We are witnessing a titanic impact at the crossroads of religion, politics, technology, and culture. Fundamentally, it is a collision of worldviews, and we are all experiencing the shockwaves. As with the Tower of Babel, man again attempts to create the Temple of Man in the age of re-enchantment." Join the people of the book as Carl Tiechrib gives a guided tour of the game of gods.
And greetings and salutations. Carl is in the room, as are the rest of us. But he didn't bring cake and ice cream. I don't know.
Well.
So, now we lost the sound. Turn your mic on. There you go.
Of course. Of course.
Of course.
Yes. Maybe some virtual cake. We can meet in the metaverse.
There's like no calories in virtual cakes. That's really good.
That's right.
That's true.
You can eat all you want and feel good about yourself.
So your heart's content.
Oh, well, the cafe crew brought tacos.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Well, it is Taco Tuesday. So.
Taco Tuesday. I love it. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Gotta be with the times.
All right. So do we go right to the slides? You're going to tell some other story first.
We'll have a little story first. I'm going to do two things. Actually, three things. Pardon me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Genesis chapter 3. Because today we're going to be tackling transhumanism. I was an early researcher in transhumanism. As a Christian researcher, I started to kind of plot where this movement was coming from and where it was going. Oh, golly, going back to probably 2002, 2003. And then I jumped into it pretty hard in 2008 and 9, attending my first transhumanist meeting in 2010. And that was with the Mormon Transhumanist Association, their annual meeting in Salt Lake City. And after that, attending transhumanist meetings in virtual space, Second Life especially, when they were doing them. Terrasem was doing their virtual meetings, and at other places as well in the meat world, as it's sometimes referred to, the default world. But there has to be a background, there has to be a context, and this is the perfect context, the perfect setting from a biblical point of view, Genesis chapter 3. And we know this passage well. We've explored it a few times, but boy, this is the groundwork. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, "Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." Then the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like or as God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. And of course, in verses 5, that is where we see the kind of everything's hinged on that verse. Mm-hmm. Your eyes will be opened. There is enlightenment. A new gnosis is coming with this. You will now know good and evil. And yes, that actually is true. We have that capacity to bring both good and evil. Now we hold both in our hands. And you can be like God. And you will not die. You're not going to die. You're immortal. You can be divine, and you can have this special knowledge and this immortality. As we go through some of the themes within transhumanism, some of the quotes that we will be using, Genesis 3 is going to pop back into your mind repeatedly. This session is called Machines of Loving Grace because it's built off of my chapter on transhumanism in Game of Gods, which is entitled Machines of Loving Grace. And I pulled that title from Richard Brautigan's famous poem, his counterculture poem. And I'll read the poem to you. It's called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. This is 1969. This is when the counterculture and cybernetics were starting to blend together, and afterwards they really came together in a significant way, which is why Silicon Valley has this incredible counterculture. San Francisco has this incredible counterculture plus high-tech fusion that's happened. I like to think, and the sooner the better, of a cybernetic meadow where mammals and computers live together in mutually programming harmony like pure water touching clear sky. I like to think, right now, please, of a cybernetic forest filled with pines and electronics where deer stroll peacefully past computers as if they were flowers with spinning blossoms. I like to think it has to be of a cybernetic ecology where we are free of our labors and joined back to nature, return to our mammal brethren and sisters, and all watched over by machines of loving grace. And you're like, wow, what a piece of re-enchantment poetry.
For sure.
Our purpose and our wonder connects us back to nature, and all of this is being safeguarded, vouchsafed by computers and technology. And we live in this incredible harmony with nature and with our cybernetic technological kind of systems, our future, our vision. So pretty wild stuff. This hope that our salvation is found in the works of our hands, in machinery. I'm going to just grab a bunch of books right here. I've got them piled up on my desk. This is not all the books I have on transhumanism, but these are some of the ones that you may run across as you might be interested in doing some research yourself. Ray Kurzweil, former director of engineering for Google, The Singularity is Near, and The Age of Spiritual Machines. Really important books in setting the tone for the modern transhumanist movement. I could go, I got stacks that are take you back from the 60s and even beyond, because this is not a new idea at all. Siberia, an older text, I believe it was like late 80s, early 90s, 1994, on the coming age of the hyperspace. Who here has Sirius XM radio? Anybody?
Yeah, I have it in my car.
Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
You're a transhumanist.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Martin Rothblatt.
No, I'm a trans listener.
A trans listener. Perfect. Martin Rothblatt, who started life as Martin Rothblatt, and then at the age of 40 had a bit of a midlife crisis. Martin was one of the most well-known engineers in satellite construction in the space industry, and then transitioned to Martin, and has written a number of books. A very important person within the transhumanist space. I've spent a little bit of time with Martin, his, her, its son.
So,
they started their own religion. Yes, go ahead,
just
Don.
to get this in order, then we go from transgender to transhuman.
Yes.
Well, that would be the next step.
Yes. In fact, Martine's book, they originally called this one The Apartheid of Sex, and then it changed from the transgender to transhuman, and that's her in Second Life.
Yes.
And she was the one who gave us Sirius XM radio. I mean, she is the top person. That's why I asked, hey, are you into Sirius XM radio? Because if you are, you're a product of Martin's little world. Kevin Kelly's older book, but still hugely influential, Out of Control. The Rise of Neo-Biological Civilization, where he argues about, hey, becoming gods is fun. Zoltan Itzvan, The Transhumanist Wager. Zoltan started the Transhumanist Party And when was it? During the 2015-16 election cycle, he was in a coffin-shaped bus and traveled across the U.S. preaching transhumanism, even going to a church and kind of making a bit of a splash as he's arguing for the transhumanist dream. Vote for me, I'll end death. That was seriously, that's the line. Probably one of the most bizarre books. This is out there in a number of ways. This is not Christian. None of these books I picked up are Christian. An Age for Lucifer. Predatory Spirituality and the Quest for Godhead.
Wow.
Godhood. And the person who wrote this book was a psychologist making the case that the transhumanist world that's about to come is a form of predatory spirituality. Crazy stuff. Future Human Evolution by John Glad. I was able to meet and spend an afternoon with John Glad. In fact, I'll have a picture of him up on the screen as we go through.
Were you glad of that?
Well, you know something, I was absolutely. It was a fascinating conversation and a sad conversation as we interviewed him as to why he was writing books on transhumanism and future human evolution, modern eugenics. And he told us, he says, well, because in a very short period of time, the computers are taking over.
There you go.
And that's all we'll have. And it was a nihilistic, dead end point of view, because it was like, he's hoping that the computers would read his books. I'm not kidding you. This is what he told me. That the computers will read his books and figure out why man became extinct so that they can take steps to circumvent their own extinction.
Not commit the same errors, huh?
That's right. Frank Tipler's bizarre technical book, Physics of Immortality. Modern Cosmology, God, and the Resurrection of the Dead. The idea of quantum archaeology, that through our quantum computers, eventually we can even resurrect those who have been deceased for decades, centuries, and even millennium. I'll give you two more just to show you where things kind of end up going. Chaos and Cyberculture by Timothy Leary. Everybody thinks of Timothy Leary. Yes. Okay, so interesting piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I know Audrey is sitting there listening. I see you. Interesting piece of the puzzle. Timothy Leary. Here's his Design for Dying, the last book that he wrote. His last number of years were spent having moved from psychedelics to cyberdelics.
Maybe you can clarify something, Carl.
Yeah, sure.
This all reminds me of the, going back to the cybergenics where people were freezing their bodies and all that to kind of come back.
100%.
Yeah. So that's kind of goes with some of this?
All part of it.
Okay.
100%. You betcha.
Oh boy.
So there we go. That just kind of shows you some of the literature that you might bump into, and one element that hasn't really been explored in the Christian research on this movement. And Audrey, maybe you need to write a paper on this. And that is on the realm of psychedelics, Timothy Leary, and cyberculture. That's a huge realm that hasn't been dived into by the Christian community to try to understand where these technical, psychedelic, and transhumanist visions kind of come together. Somebody said, I read Frank Tipler's book. Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, what's been interesting from my perspective is I like sci-fi. I read a lot of sci-fi. And some have asked me, why do you read sci-fi? And I go, well, because they are looking at what science is trying to accomplish and building it into a futuristic story.
Right.
So, you have that, like the Forbin Project, where Colossus took over the planet, basically. So there was already concern of, are we going to be able to control this thing that we're creating? And you see that come out in that film.
Yep.
Right? Yep. And then you have that 1984. You have The Matrix come out. So this has been a growing theme where now it's combined. The cybernetics look like humans and actually have human type skin to conceal themselves from being caught. And yet they're taking over. They took over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So,
don't forget Terminator.
well, that's what I said. Terminator was
Oh, I
like,
thought you said the other
Yeah.
one.
So you're right. It's science
Yeah.
fiction is a form of future casting,
Yeah.
looking to see what possibilities may exist.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is if you read the science fiction of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I read a fair amount of it. I've got a small library of science fiction from that era, and you read it, and now you're like, oh my word, we surpassed that in the 1980s.
Yeah. Yeah. They were a little behind.
well, I was saying I cannot remember the title of it now, but there's a 3-volume series I read about 2 years ago, and the entire because they start off with the Singularity, which you'll explain as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the Singularity. So you have quite a few of the civilization who have uploaded themselves into the computer, and they can, download into their own private robots to go do stuff.
Right.
Right. But they're trying to figure out now, did my soul go with me? Do I have a soul? Or is that left behind when I come in digital form?
Yep.
So they're trying to figure this out in the books they're writing on the future. Now that we're here, are we really us?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I think that's the hurdle they're trying to get over.
Yeah, there's big conversations around. I mean, and actually, we should quickly define a few terms. Singularity. Tipler was serious. His book is not fiction. You're absolutely right. He was very serious. It's a book with a lot of mathematical equations and diagrams, and he was very serious about it. The term singularity is this idea that at some point in the not too distant future, our technology will race ahead of our ability to keep up with it, and that mankind will have to evolve. We'll have to evolve into something more so that we can keep pace with the exponential growth of technology. Something else I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about transhumanist futures, there is a lot of hype and a lot of hope, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. It demonstrates, however, worldviews, and it demonstrates where man seeks to put his salvation. That's really important element of studying transhumanism. It's not, are we going to evolve through virtual reality? Are we going to resurrect the dead through cryonics? Are we going to be able to upload our consciousness? No, those are hypothetical conversations, speculative conversations, but that's where it ends. We don't have the answer. We do have the answers. And the answer is pretty much, no, we can't.
Right. Yeah.
Carl, you said that this is where man seeks for his salvation. You're talking about just avoiding physical death.
Oh, yes, but more than that, to become godlike.
Yes.
Right.
It's about
literally the Genesis 3 scenario, and that's in their own language.
So these are people that aren't atheists. They believe in a possibility of a God. They don't believe in the God of the Bible, but they believe they can become God. So it's like, okay.
And to your point, Jeff, there's a spectrum of beliefs within transhumanism. I've met Buddhist transhumanists, lots of Mormon transhumanists, atheist transhumanists, Christian transhumanists. I was in some of the early conversations when the Christian transhumanist movement was beginning, and that spun out of the work, first and foremost, of the Mormon Transhumanist Association. So there's a spectrum, and then there's also a lot of atheist humanist transhumanists, but their view is in the sense of this is a cosmic salvation, a cosmic attainment. There's no God. We become like God, or having the capacity of God. So there's some confusion, within the ranks, so to speak, because there's no hard set. Here's the Bible of transhumanism. It's an intellectual movement more than it is anything else. Something to keep in mind when it comes to technology, and this is something that the transhumanist community will talk a little bit about, but it's kind of a bit of a downer. And that is that technology has a utilitarian case study, and that usually stops at some point. So, for an example, a toilet doesn't evolve into something more. You may have lots of bells and whistles on your toilet. It is still going to be a toilet. There's utilitarian function that it can't supersede. for all the stuff that my smartphone does, it is still at its core a telephone, but just with an incredible amount of bells and whistles. This is an example of advanced technology for sure, but even this eventually reaches some limitation, or we have a transition to another form of technology that might supersede it. That all said, when I hear the hopes and aspirations from the transhumanist community, so much of it is grounded in faith, trust, a faith that this is going to happen, a hope that this is going to happen. I'm not going to give the name of the transhumanist, but he's probably the most influential transhumanist of the last 35, 40 years. I sat down with him in a hotel room in New York City to do an interview. And he told me flat out, and this is off camera, so I can't really cite it. He told me off camera, something to the effect of, look, I've been chasing this for 30 or whatever years of my life. And realistically, I am not one day closer to immortality than when I began. Oh, and that hits you. You're like, oh, you've placed your faith in something. And it's literally as transient as you are. It's going to come and go, and then it's going to vaporize and disappear. In 2013, I spent a weekend in New York City at the Global Future 2045 International Congress, where we had 800 of the world's most important transhumanists converging. And I'll talk a little bit about this as we go into this evening's talk. But at one point, I spent some time interviewing, where is the gentleman's name? Martin. Hang on. James Martin. Right there. Wonderful dude. James Martin was an English country boy. I found out after my interview that he had been raised on a farm. We were walking together from one building where we were doing the interviews back to the conference center. James Martin had given Oxford University its largest gift. He was its largest beneficiary in 900 years. There's an entire wing of Oxford named after James Martin. James is very, very clear that it was his hope in science and technology that would keep him alive, that he was looking forward to this new glorious future. James Martin wrote the book on computer connectivity. I mean, literally wrote the book back in the 1980s. 2 weeks later, after I had spent time with him, and he had invited me out for a lunch, and because we hit it off really good. We were both farm boys. We hit it off really good. And I couldn't because I had other interviews lined up. And then we separated. And it's one of my regrets. I'm kicking myself. I should have bumped things around. But we don't have the gift of hindsight, the ability to know what's going to happen. And 2 weeks later, I get an email. James Martin's body was found floating off of the wharf from his Caribbean estate. And I'm like, it just hit me like a knife. I'm like, oh, you're hoping your science and technology was going to save you. You legitimately were working towards that end. And you've met your mortal end in the ocean. A sea kayaker found his body. Like, all of a sudden, the reality hits your visions. The reality hits, your hope. And now, who do you have faith in? I have faith in the one that actually resurrected from the dead. The one who actually defeated death. So, all right, all that said, we're halfway through our 1 hour conversation. We might be bumping this into the next conversation. Let's get down with the slide. So, machines of loving grace. And I have seen so many pictures of this, this famous picture of God touching man, connecting. I've seen so many iterations of this within the transhumanist community, which tells you a lot. So Mark Swaney in Singularity puts it this way: as our understanding of technology grows, so does our understanding of the spiritual universe. Our conception of God has formed and reformed into the shape of our technology. Not only that, spiritual figures are seen as a master of current and future technology. Profound technological change and profound philosophical change are intermingled. I thought that was a telling statement, as it demonstrates that this is a worldview, that there's a proposition behind this. So when you think of transhumanism, and I'm glad we had a little conversation before just on science fiction. Oh my stars, yes, the science fiction world, especially what's given to us in Hollywood, is rife with transhumanist themes. And when I give a class on transhumanism in my secular trends course, I flash up this screen. I have a number of movie clips we'll go through, and I ask the students, so what else? What other movies, what other TV shows do you know of that have a transhumanist theme or subject matter? And the whole class will just, everybody has examples. Everybody's seen it, or they've all played it because so many people are gamers. They've that's their world. And I still contend that probably the most relevant transhumanist movie that demonstrates not just simply technological visions, but the sense of pagan reenchantment is Avatar, hands down.
Yeah.
Rewatch Avatar sometime with the perspective of pagan enchantment and transhumanism. Not just that, but also a restructuring of capitalism. The list goes on. It's quite the movie for our age, and it absolutely fits these themes that we've been talking about, really, from beginning to end. So a few key points about transhumanism. It is premised first on the belief that evolution is true, that because we are conscious, we can direct and shape and guide evolution, that technical advancements, literally the works of our hands, are poised to reshape society as it reshapes humanity, and man plays God and we become God, and technology is expressed as human ascension. And it's about preaching. It is preaching the gospel of science and technology, that through this means, through the priesthood of science, we can transcend our limits and reach beyond our bounds. That's really what this is about. We can move beyond human constraints. We can become more than human, even more than mortal. We have to change. We become godlike in our capacity. So in transhumanist circles, you'll hear lots of conversations around cognitive enhancements, enhancing your brain function, advanced physical improvements. I've seen some crazy tech at some of the events I've been to. Genetic redesigning. Hey, you want to find out, what genetic issues your baby might have? Well, let's tinker with your baby's genes before the baby's born. Body longevity, even defeating death, and in all of this, over and over again, is we will end up creating a new species called post-humanity. Transhumanism is a transitory stage to something else.
Right.
So I got a question. I was looking in your book, and it does say that some of this is even resurrecting the dead. So how many, are there quite a few involved in this that believe? They got to believe in the spirit, like you were saying, salvation before you die. It's got to get. But some are saying you can do it after you die, right?
Yes, and see, they would not necessarily say it's spirit, though some would. Because again, it's a broad movement.
Okay, consciousness.
Bingo, Jeff, you just nailed it.
Okay.
That's the term.
That is the ultimate question in the transhumanist world: is what is consciousness? How do we upload consciousness? How does consciousness survive? Because we can replace the physical body. In fact, the picture I have up here of Dr. Natasha Vita-Moore, she is all about the aesthetics of transhumanism. Can we now upload our consciousness into a non-human carrier? That's her language. So in my interview with her, I spent an afternoon with her and her husband. This is what she said when I asked her about the issue of death. And I'll be honest, I had a hard time keeping a straight face as she told me this, but she was, quote, ironically, deadly serious when she told me this. Death ought not to just have one express definition. We'll be redefining death the more and more we develop the sciences and technologies to intervene with death. So we have to look at death from various perspectives. You may want vacation death. You may want partial death. You may want to be put into cryonic suspension or another type of preservation unit, then come back and revisit life again. So there are all sorts of alternatives to this finality of death. What?
Yeah.
Sounds like wishful thinking.
Yes. And that's what it is, Don.
Yeah.
This is wishful thinking. But this demonstrates this hope, this faith. And we're not placing our faith in the one who has resurrected.
Right.
We're putting the weight on our shoulders to self-resurrect.
To them, that's mythical stuff, mythology.
Yes.
So for those that think that we could bring people back after death, how do they explain that? What happens, like the consciousness? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of interesting to me. Without being spiritual and stuff. I'd like to talk with someone that thought that, but I don't know.
Yeah, and again, what is consciousness? Is consciousness part of your DNA? Is it part of your memory bank? What is it? These are the conversations that community has. Of course, we recognize that as being made in God's image, being given the spirit of life within us, we have that spark, not just of physical life, but there's a spark of spiritual life. We are a spiritual being, and we are comprised of mind, we are comprised of spirit, and we're comprised of body. I mean, I've seen all kinds of arguments for all different elements of this, but still, that's the fundamental reality, that we are both. Not both. We're spirit, mind, and body. But the transhumanist community is wondering, like, how do we preserve consciousness? Because that's the big question. Because consciousness equates to personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, fair question. How do you do that? Good luck.
The memories, I mean, everything that you've been through.
Right.
I mean, how do you transfer all that?
Right. So Martine Rothblatt, where is she? I've got her book here now. Martine Rothblatt. She started a new religious movement called Terasem. They've got, I believe, a little Terasem chapel in Florida. They have their own little creed. They have their own rituals. And you do something as a Terasem member to help improve the possibility of your immortality by constantly uploading pictures of yourself, videos of yourself, constantly journaling, like every day, constantly. Mm-hmm. So that after you pass away, Terasem will then take and compile all of your collected memories, create a digital double of yourself, and poof.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You're alive.
So that is, you just explained what is functionally the Jehovah's Witness view
I was just thinking that.
Of resurrection.
Yeah.
It isn't the you that walked door to door and passed out pamphlets. It is a duplicate with a memory bank of your memories downloaded into the newly created being called you.
You're restored, like reconstituted.
No, they're not even reconstituted, because everything is new. You have copies of the memories of a previous being that no longer exists.
Right. Whereas
there could be 2 or 3 of you recreated. There's,
right. Or 10 or 20. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
If you wanted to create yourself as a whole football team, you could do that.
Some people are that great. It would be nice having many of them around.
Yeah. Well, then who would win and who would lose, right? I won. No, it's actually me. I don't know.
Yes, there is a certain element of narcissism in this. Not to deny that. There is a, Yet at the same time, the narcissism, they would maybe couch it as saying that we're doing this for the greater good.
Yeah.
That typically is the argument. We are doing this for the greater good. We're doing this to enhance all of society, not just us. Yeah. Though the ethical arguments and the ethical discussions in the transhumanist movement, and I give the transhumanist movement credit, they debate the ethics of so much of this because they recognize that it's going to collide with realities. Mm-hmm. And so some of the ethical conversations are, well, are we going to have 2 sets of humans, those who can afford the upgrade and those who can't? Like, this kind of gets into the realm again of those science fiction movies. You've got the I'm thinking of Ready Player One, where you've got those who can afford to live in the in your virtual cloud all the time, and then you've got others scrambling just to kind of pick up the pieces where they can and to try to make it work.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. We'll flip
Yeah, that was an interesting story. So
It was.
Very,
And if did you read the book or did you watch the movie or did you do both?
I did both.
Yeah,
I've
likewise.
seen the movie. It's been a while.
I thought the book
Yep.
was better, but that's usually the case.
Usually,
I thought the book was better because it made a very strong argument that the perspective out through the whole story is premised on his atheistic beliefs, his moving away from Christianity, his moving away from the superstitious beliefs,
right.
and embracing atheism. That comes out in the book strong, but doesn't really come out in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, functionally, as we were talking about this, in order to really be good at this, like Rothblatt and others, you have to be basically physicalist. There is nothing really beyond this world. And so they fundamentally don't understand the human condition. So death, biblically at least, death is not non-existence.
Right.
It is separation. Our spirit separates from our body.
Right.
So you might be able to digitize memories from a collection that you've created as you've lived, but you cannot digitize your spirit or your consciousness.
Exactly.
Correct.
I
We're
think
looking
that's the
forward
wall
to.
they're- I'm sorry. I think that's the wall that they're bumping into at this point.
Right, James. Absolutely.
Wait,
So-
do they believe that, or are there people that? I mean, what you said, Don. How do you know? Maybe they can figure a way to digitize every single thing about a person. I'm sure there's people thinking that if they think that they can bring people back from after death. So
digitization is simply a digital. It's a series of zeros and ones. It's just information about you. It's not you.
It has no soul, but it knows how you think.
Right.
Yes.
Because of the information.
Right. So they could create a robot that acts like you, but it's still not you.
Right.
And if it's based off of a Windows operating system, it'll go into blue screen mode at some point.
And it'll freeze.
It's going to be crashing a lot. Yeah.
Into walls and everything.
I have to admit they have gotten better that way.
Yeah,
In a way, I kind of miss the old, 3.1 and Windows.
It's got to be a Mac or something.
Yeah, they have issues too. But alrighty, we'll keep going. Alrighty. So yes, we end up landing in the realm of evolution because this is fundamentally an issue of evolution. That through science and technology, we can evolve the human species. And of course, this pulls from Francis Galton and Charles Darwin, this idea that science, especially the work of Galton, science can assist natural selection and we can become a perfect man. We can find a perfect breed. A lot, and I do mean a lot of transhumanists will balk at the idea of eugenics. They will say, we are not eugenicists. However, I have spent time with some who are very willing to say, yes, we are liberal eugenicists. We are neo-eugenicists. That being this, that in the realm of eugenics, there is no opting out. Whereas within transhumanism, especially the liberal side of transhumanism, it's a voluntary operation. It is a consensual act. It's not a coerced act. Interesting fellow, Nikolai Fedorov. Every transhumanist, in my argument, has at least some links ideologically back to Fedorov. Fedorov died in 1903. He came up with the idea of cosmism or cosmic futurism. He basically synchronized. Oh man, I got the wrong word there. Symphonized. Synchronized. Yes, he symphonized as well. I'm
Probably
sure.
did.
He synchronized Russian orthodoxy with science and the theory hypothesis of evolution, and believed that mankind's greatest task was to unite the living and the dead through science. Jesus is a model of resurrection, according to Fedorov. And because Jesus Christ was able to resurrect himself, and that Jesus Christ was a man, therefore, we as men should be able to find the key that unlocks our own resurrection. That was Fedorov's argument. And so for him, man's common task, that's how he framed it, our common task was to defeat death and bring about the resurrection. He was very influential in the Soviet space program. A lot of the early cosmonauts, and there's a reason why they're called cosmonauts, were either devotees of Fedorov or were influenced by Fedorov's ideas. Fedorov is an intellectual hero in the space movement because of the work that he had done in terms of broadcasting or future visioning man's ascension beyond the bounds of the earth. Very interesting fellow. He's a librarian, and in many respects, he was kind of like a forgotten figure, at least in terms of Western intellectual circles. He kind of stayed in the background within the Soviet system until after the Cold War, and then his ideas all of a sudden were kind of resurrected again.
There you go.
Yeah, they can look just at the history of it, this idea of eugenics. We often take a look at the negative side of eugenics because of the work of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany, and there's a German poster from that time period. But we forget that eugenics is something that's spilled out of the US and the UK first. Canada took some role in this as well. But the very first state, and Ruth, you're in Indiana, the very first state that, in fact, I believe it's the very first legal jurisdiction that puts eugenics on the law or in law was 1907 in Indiana. And they would sterilize certain individuals, and all this was, of course, for racial hygiene. And then we see, of course, Nazi Germany advancing this to say Slavs, Jews, you are undesirables, and we need the perfect race. We need blood and soil to be pure. So this does fit into the transhumanist conversation, though I'll tell you right now, a lot of transhumanists will say, no, we're not eugenicists because we don't want to see this as a coercive movement. We want to see this as a consensual movement, a voluntary movement. All right.
So if you consent, we won't kill you. Is that kind of
Something like that.
I don't know. We don't want to make this political, but
Too late.
Yeah, we can go down water roads with that one, right?
Oh, maybe that's a different group. We'll make you a deal you can't refuse. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, yes. Awesome.
Or else.
And then in the 1930s, we saw the technocracy movement begin to emerge, this idea that society can be directed through technicians and engineers, that they are the priests of progress, and that we can create a new society through engineering, but not just a new society. According to Harold Loeb in his 1933 book, Life in a Technocracy, technocracy envisions another form of domestication, a form in which man may become more than man through breeding with specific individuals for specific purposes. A technocracy then should in time produce a race of man superior in quality to any now known on Earth. I'm giving you a timeline, if you haven't noticed. I'm giving you a historical timeline. And then Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Catholic mystic, renegade Catholic mystic, Chardin in the 1950s was writing about the ultra-human. Very similar in concepts to the transhuman, but the ultra-human would be us, mankind, through science, finding a physical and spiritual evolution, again, through science, and that we would be able to advance life through technology and eventually converge as a unified humanity into the cosmic Christ. During the same time period, Julian Huxley, the first director of UNESCO, publishes his book, New Bottles for New Wine. And here is this is not the first time I have seen transhumanism mentioned. I have a couple of examples from the 1800s, including one from Theosophy. But this is what Huxley wrote in New Bottles for New Wine. As a result of 1,000 million years of evolution, the universe is becoming conscious of itself. This is cosmic humanism. This cosmic self-awareness is being realized in one tiny fragment of the universe, in a few of us human beings. The human species can, if it wishes, transcend itself, not just sporadically, an individual here in one way, an individual there in another way, but in its entirety as humanity. We need a name for this new belief. Perhaps transhumanism will serve. Man remaining man, but transcending himself by realizing new possibilities of and for his human nature. I believe in transhumanism. Once there are enough people who can truly say that, the human species will be on the threshold of a new kind of existence. So that right there is where the term transhumanism gains traction, and we are indebted to Huxley for how he framed it. If you want to see where in the 1990s some of this thinking was emerging, and it was converging with spirituality, with psychedelics, with cybernetics, you'd have to go to the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, just outside of San Francisco. And there you had maverick theologians, you had military intelligence personnel, you had politicians, you had philosophers, and you had writers, and you had professors. You had the influencers of North America come together to get naked in the hot tubs, do yoga, and sing.
Play drums.
Play drums. Sing the song, I want to give the world a Coke.
Oh, yes.
Sing it. Yeah, no, they didn't do that. But there's a Coke commercial built around the Esalen experience where they're showing that.
There you go.
This is interesting because this is from the Esalen catalog of 1993 and their workshop, Machine Dreams and Techno-Shamanism. This is 1993. Is information immortal?
There we go.
What unexplored realms of spirit will we encounter with amazing new forms of computer and electronic hypermedia? New myths will be needed. Oh, this is re-enchantment. New mysteries will be encountered. How can ancient models of mind, such as shamanism, Hindu, and voodoo, help us comprehend silicon-based consciousness?
There you go.
Why are neuroenhancers crucial tools for so many computer innovators? That's microdosing, by the way. Can humans share an erotic relationship with a machine being? Are Earth spirits at play in fields of photons and electronic spin? A neo-psychedelic subculture is co-evolving with new technologies to reveal glimpses of exotic futures. That was the excitement from the 1993 Esalen workshop. The 1996 one, techno-shamanism, total immersion in spiritual technology. This is where I find the movement fascinating, as they are looking to, in essence, create a convergence in every facet. Yeah. And so this is from their workshop, the write-up for it in the catalog.
Wow.
To wholeheartedly embrace technology may be the only way to partake in the next phase of human evolution. Participants will experience brain machines, the internet, computer fractals, virtual reality, tarot, astrology, and I Ching through computer programs, chaos math, hemispheric alignment, audio, video games, and even new media. The workshop will explore the techno-vision quest and evaluate it as an adjunct to more traditional spiritual practices. Go ahead.
What convergence? Tell me, because you said they're looking to create that.
That's right. This is a convergence. This is a convergence of spirituality, technology, social change, potentially, in their view, a convergence towards in this one, an exotic future, a new humanity. So this is not just simply a group of computer nerds talking code.
Right.
This is not just theologians having conversations about the nature of God. This isn't just philosophers talking about what consciousness may or may not be. This is all of it being combined into this larger narrative, this worldview narrative.
That's it.
Yeah,
it's a new worldview encompassing all this, and it's transforming as more information comes through their experiences and their, what they're uncovering, and it's a constantly moving worldview.
100%, Jeffrey, and part of the reason, Jeff, why it's constantly moving is the technology is constantly changing, and so with the technological changes, then all of a sudden there's again a revision or a hope, a renewed sense that this is where we're going, because now look what we can do with our meta headsets. Look what we can do with our gene editing.
Right. So you have all of this
Yes.
going on, the tarot, the astrology, the spiritual. You have the Enneagram being introduced at the same time,
That's
at
right.
the same place, Esalen, where they are taking ayahuasca was his travel of choice, spiritual travel of choice drug.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Enneagram, just like the Labyrinth, are spiritual
Mm-hmm.
technologies.
Right.
They're
It's like it's so much fun because everything's coming together. We're moving forward to this magical, wonderful, enchanted place,
Yes.
right? It's
Right.
getting better and better every day.
right. And to the point, the question or the statement that just came up on having artificial romantic relationships with the AI. Yes,
Yeah, they
that's a real thing. That's where we've gone already. We've got whole apps for that. I like how this workshop ends in the catalog description. Again, this is 1996. The weekend will conclude with a techno-pagan rave dance.
There you go.
Participants are encouraged to bring at least one item of technology. I love that. One item of technology. This is 1996.
Oh,
Here's my 465 and my my 50-pound screen that goes with it.
Yeah.
We laugh at this now, but
Oh.
I'm looking around. I'm thinking to myself, there's probably and when I'm talking to my students in Bible college, I'm like, probably you have 2 or 3 pieces of technology on you already. You're probably having a smartphone. You've got your smart watch. You've probably got some other thing connected somewhere. You're already living this. You're already here.
Absolutely. Ooh.
So yeah, this is when I went to school in the 1970s and 80s, we had these stupid human potential posters on the wall, but we never had this one. And I thought, boy, this one fits the bill. Transhumanism. They told me I could be anything I wanted, so I became a god. And this is where we get in some really interesting statements. And here's this from the documentary Becoming Transhuman, Mark Peace. An important fellow because of his cutting edge work in virtual reality and in the early stages of web development. This is what he said. Once the genome was transcribed, once we knew what had made us human, we had in that moment passed into the transhuman. Knowing our codes, we can recreate them in our so-called synthetic rows of ones and zeros, artificial life. And now we have discovered the multiverse where nothing is true and everything is permissible. And now we will reach into the improbable, resequence ourselves into a new being, debugging the natural state, translating ourselves into supernatural, incorruptible, eternal. There is no God but man.
There you go.
He went on to say this: men die, planets die, even stars die. We know all this because we know it. We seek something more, a transcendence of transience, translation to incorruptible form, an escape, if you will, a stop to the wheel. We seek, therefore, to bless ourselves with perfect knowledge and perfect will, to become as gods, take the universe in hand, and transform it in our image, for our own delight. As it is on earth, so it shall be in the heavens. The arrow of evolution is lipping us into the transhuman, an apotheosis to reason, salvation, attained by good works.
And there it is.
And Jeff, that goes back to our earlier conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder how they would define heavens there. They're using these words.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
where God lives, that's for sure.
This is one of my favorite quotes just because of and I can't mimic his tone. I'll try, I'll fail, I'll try though. This is a fascinating little video clip in the documentary Technocalypse. And this is Richard Seed, really a controversial physicist who was involved in cloning research back in the late 1990s and was making the news back then. We are going to become gods, period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, then we'll have big trouble. We'll have warfare. The only way to prevent me is to kill me. And you kill me, I'll kill you. How ridiculous! It's so
Okay.
petty. It's so playground, elementary school playground childish. My dad's bigger than your dad.
Oh, yeah. Where's all the niceness that was there before? What happened to it?
That's gone.
It's out of the window.
Jerome Lanier, if you have the opportunity to get his book, You Are Not a Gadget. In fact, I'll hold it up if we want to go back to the main screen and then back to the slide. But You Are Not a Gadget. He's not a Christian at all, but he was one of the pioneers in VR, and he is brilliant when it comes to building criticisms of the technological utopias that we conjure up in our ideologies. Back to the slides.
Back in the slide.
Sorry about that. All right, this is what he says. But if you want to make the transition from the old religion, where you hope God will give you an afterlife, to the new religion, where you hope to become immortal by getting uploaded into a computer, then you have to believe that information is real and alive. So for you, it will be important to redesign human institutions like art, the economy, and the law to reinforce the perception that information is alive. You demand that the rest of us live in your narrow conception of a state religion. You need us to deify information to reinforce your faith. Yeah. So what are the technologies then that reinforce this faith in transhumanism? Well, it's a plethora of things, from internet connectivity, cryonics. The list is quite long. Here's Max Moore and his Alcor cryonics facility. Each one of those tanks has a dead person. All of them has paid big dollars to have either full body preservation or just their heads preserved, in the hope that at some point in the future, science will catch up and will resurrect them.
Are they in for a surprise?
Yes, they are in for a surprise. And you hope that the power doesn't go out for a long period of time, right?
Right. If the power goes out, then they won't get ahead.
No more popsicles.
Bad.
So you brought up a good word, okay? That's the key, right? A dead person, you said. Well, how did they define dead?
Oh, yeah. And this is a really interesting issue, Jeff, because as Max has explained, and I've heard it, I mean, we've talked, Max and I have had a couple of short conversations at transhumanist events. He explained that, it is one of those medically kind of dicey areas, because you want to take the body, you want to take the head, if they can only afford to only afford to upload their head into the system. You want to take it actually before death. Because the moment death occurs, the second death occurs, there's cellular breakdown. There's already a breakdown beginning. And so you need to take it. So as I understand it, they have their medical team come. They are right there beside the doctors. The doctors, as soon as the doctor says, dead, they're like, give her. We got to get this body preserved. Literally every second at that point counts. Okay. So then it really raises an interesting question on the ethics of, all right, where is this line? Where's this line? Yeah.
So that also raises the question: don't they? If the guy, aren't they going to put the shockers on him so they can resurrect him? I mean, so much for that idea, because if he's going to get, they're going to preserve his head, he can't get revived. Right.
This is an issue of hope. That's what this is.
Yeah.
It really is hope.
Wow.
All right. We'll quickly just jump. We're going to probably skip through some of this fairly quickly. AI being, of course, one of the main conversations in the tech community right now. It's also has always been a dominant point within transhumanism, a technology pointing to the transhumanist future. I'll give you just a couple of quotes, and we'll skip some of the other slides that go with this section. The future will be dense with computers. They will hang around everywhere in lush growths like Spanish moss. They will swarm like locusts, but the swarm is not merely a big crowd. Individuals in the swarm lose their identities. The computers that make up this global swarm will blend together into the seamless substance of the cyberspace. Interesting way of looking at it. Yes. Transhumanism fits so well with atheism. Yes, it does. The soul isn't an issue. Sentience is the issue. Yes, it is a metaphysical issue. It's a biological issue. Correct. Correct. It is a biological issue. John Glad and myself had a really interesting afternoon, big conversation, as I was telling you about earlier. He writes in Future Human Evolution, carbon-based technology has its limitations. The individual human brain is limited by its size, by the amount of time available for learning, and by the speed at which it can process information. A computer can be created of any size with limitless memory and limitless programming. The machine brain will be something like God. I really enjoyed my time in his apartment. We were there with a film crew, doing interviews. He was living alone. I believe he was suffering from Parkinson's. When the conversations were all done and we're packing up our stuff, he was begging us, "Can you guys stay longer? Can you stay? I have ice cream. Can you stay? I'll get some drinks up. Please stay." And it's one of those moments where I will not forget. I interviewed him back in 2013, walking down the hallway, and there he is standing at the door of his apartment, looking broken and so alone, and just begging us. And we couldn't stay, begging us to stay. And I'm like, oh. For all of your hope in some technological future, your humanity still comes forward.
Right.
Humanity still comes out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We're just going to skip some of this on artificial intelligence, different types of artificial intelligence. AI-generated art. What is real? What is not? This is going to be an issue. It already has been an issue, even a legal issue. This is fun. Burning Man in 1920s. Here's some pictures from Burning Man event in the 1920s. There's some pictures of Burning Man 1963 and a Burning Man image from 2022. None of those pictures are real. Burning Man only started in 1986. It wasn't the big event. Wasn't the big event it is today until in the late 1990s, early 2000s. All of this is computer AI generated, and it raised the question in terms of historical authenticity.
Right.
Can we create entirely new histories?
Apparently.
We have the documents, the pictures, we can produce the sounds, we can have it all laid out. And when these images were making the rounds back in 2022, because that's when these pictures were being circulated, in the very early stages of AI art, there was people going, "Oh wow, it looks so cool. I wish I could have been there at that point." And the conversations made it very, very clear that they believed this was true.
Sure.
And I'm going, you guys have just had the digital rug pulled right over your eyes.
Wow.
So this makes the ministry of truth much easier to accomplish.
That's exactly.
1984, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I won't get into it, but if you want to read the Explorer, where the technologies of transhumanism really end up having incredible functionality, it's the battle space. The battle space is today's battle space is the most integrated digital environment you can imagine. It has changed so radically. Brain-computer interfacing is another old tech, very old tech that is seeing kind of a resurgence with Elon Musk's Neuralink. But again, this is another technology that transhumanist community points to as demonstrating a transhumanist future. Of course, there's Elon with his Neuralink. I'm just going to skip for the case of space, case of time. Virtual worlds, a metaverse. Yeah, there's yours truly with a headset. First gen Oculus. In a virtual world. And of course, the big question is, how does this blur the lines between what is real and what is virtual? Do you have a virtual double? Can there be a virtual reality? Well, all of you are on social media, I'm sure of it. And if you're not, Jeff is shaking your head. No, good for you, Jeff. Awesome. I wish I was in your shoes. But you all have an online presence. Even this online presence we're doing right now is a product of virtual engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And so we already are living this out. And VR is used extensively in automotive design, medical training, education and course delivery, even travel planning. I've been to conferences in VR worlds. I've been to concerts in VR worlds. I've been to festivals in VR worlds. I've spent quite a bit of time, even before I ever went to Burning Man, in Second Life inside their Burn community, talking to individuals, because here we had this ability to do one-on-one conversations in a virtual setting. And so, yeah, here's just this is old tech. This is Second Life, the first non-gaming kind of two-dimensional VR platform, and it's still very functional. This is me wearing the black. On the very bottom corner, that's my avatar, sitting at a transhumanist conference with Teichrib. You can see over my shoulder, there's somebody with wings, and I've got a bigger screenshot, and that was Lucifer hovering over our event.
No.
Bizarre. And I've been to church in Second Life. All this stuff exists. It's interesting doing a spiritual survey of what's there, because everything imaginable, spiritual, is being explored in these environments. Yeah, from Forbes magazine, 2020. This is already 5 years ago. At the final level, we enter hyper-reality, a state where the physical and virtual worlds converge, where we no longer distinguish between the two realities. But more importantly, the distinctions wouldn't matter because people derive equal meaning and value from the simulated world. And that's one of the danger points.
Yeah.
You look at genetic editing. Oh my goodness, back to a God statement. Leon Cass from the President's Council on Bioethics. All the boundaries are up for grabs. All the boundaries that have defined us as human beings, boundaries between a human being and an animal, and between a human being and a superhuman being or a god. Back to Genesis 3. That's what this goes to. Yep. So in 2023, I had the opportunity, as I said a little while ago, to go to the Global Futures 2045 Congress with Ray Kurzweil, Dmitry Itzkov, Martin Rothblatt, James Martin, quite the group of people. And there was lots of conversations around brain mapping, brain reverse engineering, neural dust, putting dust, literally micro doses of dust that can go inside the cranium of your brain, populate your brain, make neural connections, and then be read through brain-computer interfacing. Artificial carriers for human personalities. And so much of what we talked about then hasn't happened. There are limitations. We saw robotic doubles, and a special letter was written. There's James Martin, Peter de Mendes, and Dmitry Itzkov. They had penned a special letter to the United Nations, basically saying, "Please, we need some global guidance for transhumanism."
I just see what you were talking about when we have these two worlds and we can't tell the difference, and we're learning the same, and we put the same value on these made-up worlds that we can go live in. Think of the power of the people that are creating those worlds, over driving all of humanity in whatever direction they want, because they're creating those scenarios we jump into and escape to, and then we can't tell what's real and what's not. They're just immense power over people's minds.
Absolutely. Immense power. And the thing is, we, by what we do online, leave let's call it a personality trait or a characteristic. We have a footprint of what we do. You can go to my social media pages and you can scroll through. You can know who I am because I've left a lot of myself on there. Even if you do it in ways that are very impersonal, it's inevitable.
So they're learning.
Of course.
They're learning right now just how to program you in the future perfectly to get you to do whatever you want. We're going to be real sheep.
We already are.
It's going to get a lot worse, it seems.
I know. What was fascinating with the Global 2045, or pardon me, Global 2045 Congress, and we'll be wrapping this up really soon because I see it's after 9. It ended with an interfaith panel with Christian, Muslim, Hindus, Jews, talking about what this looks like from a religious point of view. And we were told that we're going to create a form of God men and create a godlike civilization. One of them said, "You are the light, you are the truth, you are the beginning, you are the end." And I sat there listening, and I thought to myself, when they made that statement, I thought, you are a plagiarizer.
Yeah, you're an idiot would come to mind too, but
Yeah. But it demonstrates that this is a spiritual, religious issue. And I'll close really quickly with this. I had the opportunity that same year to go to the Mormon Transhumanist Association, and I was asked to deliver a Christian critique of religious transhumanism. You can go to the Mormon Association webpage, to their YouTube page, and you can watch my 15 to 18 minute long presentation arguing against religious transhumanism from a Christian point of view. And so that's a younger me. My goodness, it's a younger me already. The bottom line, my talk, and again, I would encourage you actually to go and watch it. My talk ended with Jesus on the cross, recognizing along the way that as Christians, there is we could call it a form of transhumanism that we're looking forward to, and that is a resurrection with a new body. But it's not our hands that do this.
Right.
It's not our technology. It's not our work.
It's the real deal.
It's the real deal. It's not even our attempt to resurrect ourselves. It is Christ and Christ alone. And then I close my talk by making the case of the cross. And I reminded my listeners that as Jesus hung on the cross being executed, he had a thief on either side. One thief is chastising, and the other thief is saying to the effect, "Don't you fear God? This is an innocent man." And then there's an exchange between Jesus and that thief. And in that exchange, the thief asks to be remembered in paradise. And Jesus said, in essence, "You'll be with me. You'll be with me. Today you'll be with me in paradise." What struck me was what Jesus didn't say. Nowhere did Jesus say, "Tough luck. You need to find a scientific solution to your problem of death." Nowhere did Jesus say, "Good luck. You need to do more good works. You need to join the priesthood. You need to do more rituals. You need to find some problem that will overcome the issue of death through taking evolution in hand." He didn't say any of those things. None of that. All that the thief could do, and this is important, all that the thief could do was trust on the one who was going to do it all.
Right.
Period. And that's it. That is the counter to this man-made hope that in science and technology we redeem ourselves.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah. I know we're already over time. Any comments or thoughts?
I ponder on this as well and say, wow, I'm looking at a society that we are looking at, and we're wondering what in the world are they thinking because of all these I don't know how many hundreds of genders they think we have, and and the pretending to be animals and all this stuff. I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to, if they're really going to be able to accomplish this with these kind of idiots running around. I'm not sure. So I just thought, well, something to come to mind. I'm like, I don't know.
It's interesting. One thing I will say, James, about the transhumanist movement, I've met some really nice people there. I've had great conversations. When I went to the Mormon Transhumanist Association meeting, I know already before I went that they wanted to use me a little bit like an intellectual punching bag. That was some of the social media conversation that I was picking up on.
Yeah.
And when I got there, Lincoln Cannon, the president of the association, by the way, nice guy. I consider him a friend. We've had lots of conversations. I haven't talked to him now for a while, but For a while, we would go back and forth fairly regularly, and then we met actually in 2015 in Salt Lake City after the Parliament of World Religions, just to sit down and enjoy each other's company, have a conversation. But when I got to the MTA's meeting, Lincoln approached me, and the first thing he said was, "You're brave for being here," because he already knew where this was going to go.
Sure.
And I said, "You're brave to have me, because I know, especially in the Mormon community, you don't bring in somebody who's going to criticize in a public way on a public platform." And he ended up getting me a gratis ticket to go to the General Assembly, because it was happening that same weekend, so I could go listen to the prophet. And they treated me with a lot of respect. But the bottom line was our worldviews were it was a complete dichotomy. It was a complete opposite worldview.
Right.
A complete opposite faith.
Right.
The one thing I'm seeing here, Carl, is that as this stuff evolves, when we talk about God and man, we talk about free will and God's sovereignty, but when it comes to this stuff, it seems like man's going to be losing whatever free will he has, because, being in these environments, they're just going to be convinced to live, and it's getting like reality is going to be created for us.
Lost.
And we're going to be buying into it. So our free will is kind of going away. It's irrelevant almost. We'll find bliss in these things, and we'll just be, so.
Yeah.
Right, at that point, I think that we are actually creating, yes, we are creating the loss of our own free will. We're actually trying to legislate rights for AI.
Yes.
With sentience.
Yes.
So, where do you go with that? And how would you interpret that when you don't believe in a soul? Of course, it's biological, it's not metaphysical.
Right.
But philosophically, it is.
Oh, so absolutely, Krista.
It's an issue.
Absolutely. One thing I hope that you folks will take away from this conversation, and I've talked a little bit about it, or just kind of, pulled at it a little bit using the situation that happened at the Mormon Transhumanist conference. It should be plain and evident that the transhumanist community opens up a conversation for Christianity.
True.
100%.
True.
You should be able to have a good heart-to-heart, head-to-head conversation, comparing and contrasting. Because this is a wide open door to have those kinds of conversations. It is about faith. It is about resurrection. It is about salvation. It is about upgrading. For us, we know that comes as well, but it is through Christ who does it with our resurrection. My goodness, to me, this is like a wide open door that just screams, let's have a conversation. So,
along those lines,
right.
A couple of things stand out to me. One is how desperate we are for something to give meaning and purpose to our life.
Exactly.
Because most of these guys, especially the earlier ones, but even most of the ones today, have to realize they're not personally going to participate in actually becoming this kind of God. I mean, it's just we're not there yet, and yet they're altruistically pushing this because they've convinced themselves it gives meaning and purpose to human life. And the other thing is the recognition that human life as it is without God is not enough.
Right.
Secularism has been telling us this life is enough. Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. Embrace this life. It's not enough. And if you don't have the ability to think of Christianity as a viable option, the desperation with which you try to create, a path to something more.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, if the internet this new consciousness. I mean, if social media is a picture of what new consciousness is going to be like, how in the world is that an upgrade or an enhancement of anything?
Amen.
It's all a plot by our cats for them to become gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was my point earlier. Yeah.
I mean, Carl's absolutely right. This opens up so many avenues of fruitful discussion. Because, you know, we spent most of the hour laughing at these guys, and yet they're very serious about things that the standard secularists that we were used to for the last century had no clue about. And they're at least feeling the need that there's got to be something more than just this.
Right.
And so, you know, to show them the credibility of the Christian answer from the historicity of the resurrection that's already happened. What an opportunity that is.
100%. 100%. And the very fact that they are looking for what Christ gives.
Exactly.
Even though there's for the most part a rejection of Christianity, nevertheless the conversation now is open. It's there, and we have to take seriously their view. I have to take them serious in their faith. I don't agree with it. I can laugh at some of it. Honestly, I have to take them seriously because they take themselves seriously, and it is serious.
Right.
What is that faith in?
Well, in themselves.
What is that faith in, Carl? Do you think?
Science, technology,
themselves,
the works of our hands. But that's always what it is. It's just another manifestation.
Yeah.
Right. It's another manifestation. Really, it's another manifestation of that Babel narrative of we will build it.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic, too, this faith in science and technology right now, because I remember when the COVID crisis first was starting up, we were just first getting the first lockdowns. And I was watching this video of this scientist, you know, and say, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to science the crap out of it and fix it. And science in the general population has lost some of its credibility because of the gap people saw between that promise and the reality. And there's a challenge there to these guys who are putting all their hope in science and technology.
Right.
So, you know, it's a interesting world we're in now, and people are all over the place. But there's a real loss of confidence in the very thing these guys have pinned their hopes in that took place as a result of our experience of trying to science the crap out of COVID. And that was going to fix everything. It was going to be fine. Because it became pretty obvious that the head scientist was telling us what he thought we needed to hear and not what he thought was actually true.
Yep.
Well, lads and lasses, I think we're going to have to end it for the evening.
Aww. Somebody had to do it. It was me.
Somebody has to do it. I've been at it since 5 this morning.
No.
Yikes.
Just transition to a different time zone.
Well, coming over to mine is not going to help.
That's true. You got to go back.
Go
Well,
young man.
I'm going to end the stream,
Yes.
and if you all want to hang around, James can turn the lights off when he leaves.
Oh.